Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda Rose and today I actually have my dog with me today. But I actually have a video for you that is about my teaching experience. It's been a while since I've done a video about teaching, but as you all know, and if you're new, now you know that I have almost completed my first year of teaching middle school. The last day of school is June 27th, so it's right around the corner, and this school year has truly gone by so fast. And I put together a list of 5 things that I have learned this year from teaching middle school. I think that a lot of it can also be applied to just new teachers in general, but it's the things that I have realized with going from teaching high school for 9 years of my career and then having my first career with 6th grade, which is as young as it gets when we're talking about middle school. So I hope that you all enjoy this video. Again, it's been a while. Excuse the congestion. Allergies are rampant right now, and so that's ultimately what you hear. But I hope that you find this video helpful. It's just my reflections, something that I like to do often, and I figured why not share it with you all since it's been a while since I've been on the tube. So let's get into it. The 5 lessons that I've learned from teaching middle school. The first lesson is that less is more. I really had to learn this the hard way because of the school that I transitioned from. I came from a charter school that taught 56-minute periods, and I also had high school. So I was used to being able to really cram in a lot in one period. But now that I went from that to middle school and 45 minutes, that adjustment took me a long time. And to be honest with you guys, some days I'm still adjusting to the time difference and also how much students can do in a class period. So when I say less is more, what I truly mean is students not necessarily doing so much, but truly focusing on 1 to 2 things that really enforce the skill that you want them to walk away with. Quantity is not necessarily your goal, it's quality. Are they working on one particular skill for at least 20 to 25 minutes of the class period versus how much content can we get in a class period? That is probably the biggest shift in my mindset that I've had to make, where I've really had to be okay with, it's all right if we don't get to this topic today or this week. What's more important is the skill that I'm trying to teach using the content of social studies. In my old school, my mindset was very much, they have to know this. They have to know all of this information. And so oftentimes I would cram in so much information, not necessarily always focusing on the skill that I wanted my students to get from that lesson. So that has been a big adjustment period, but I do think that teaching this way is so much more useful, and it is a really great way to assess students. It's not necessarily important if they know or remember all of these facts, but the skill that you used to get them there, right? Are they truly learning how to identify similarities and differences? Do they truly know how to identify the main idea from this social studies topic that we're doing, as opposed to making the skill the center of my lesson versus making the content the center? So that's something that I am learning still, but I do think that I have gotten much better at this. And so yes, less is more when it comes to teaching middle school. The second lesson that I've learned, which is actually really difficult for me, is to prepare for your expectations to be wrong. I am someone who likes to plan things through and through. I like to have expectations. I like to do a lot of research, gather intel and data so that I know exactly what to expect. But the truth is, when you're starting a new school and when you're teaching a new grade level and new content, some of your expectations are bound to be incorrect. And so being okay with being wrong, being okay with the unpredictability of teaching, being okay with being thrown curveballs. I know for many it's if you are already a teacher, you know that that's to be expected. But I think coming into this school year, I experienced that on another level. And so it's not necessarily in a negative way, but for example, things like behavior. The students came in so much younger than I had anticipated. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they hadn't been in school since the fourth grade. Other expectations. The fact that it took me so much longer to lesson plan, so much longer to research the topics that I had to teach my students. I really did not expect it to be so much work. I really was riding on the fact that I've been teaching for so long, I got this, but the truth is I am a new teacher in many ways. I think just being okay with being wrong, being okay with your expectations or your predictions not being what you wanted it to be is okay. Are some of them disappointing? Yes, but they're not, detrimental. They're not necessarily like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But I think just knowing and preparing that whatever you think it's going to be like, it might be twice as hard. And at least if you go into it with that mindset, if it's not that difficult, then great. But I think I underplayed or downplayed how hard this transition was truly going to be for me. The third thing I would say that I've learned is that repetition is necessary. Wow. Again, teaching high school, I could go over something maybe once or twice and we were good to go. But with middle school, it's important that repetition exists and is continuous. Repetition when it comes to reviewing content, repetition when it comes to the same images being used, maybe in the beginning of the lesson and also at the end of the lesson. Much of it has to be very full circle, very strategic, and very planned out. Repetition, not just of content, but again, obviously repetition of skill. Just because you've gone over something multiple times doesn't mean that all of your students have grasped it. What you do once in 1 week, it should pop up again in another week. It should be a recycling, a repetition of all of these skills and all of the content. And again, I know that this sounds obvious, and I did do a lot of repetition even with my high school students, but what I'm noticing is with middle school, they just need that even more. Middle school, it's really just deciding on what are the main things that you want them to focus on throughout the whole year, and then recycle them, recycle them, recycle them, repeat them. And that is something that I have learned and I am truly going to enforce even more next year. Number 4, if you can't identify the skill, then rethink the lesson. Now, as a social studies teacher, this is something that I have struggled with. I think when you are an English teacher, it's a lot easier to identify the skill that you want the students to walk away with in the lesson. For myself, so much of my mindset has been the skill, like I want them to know this information. I want them to be able to know the differences between this. And then I started to realize, okay, wait a second. The way that I view content and skills are very jaded. If I want my students to compare and contrast, I need to know that that's exactly what they're doing. If I want my students to analyze a document, how are they analyzing the document? Again, are they looking for similarities and differences? Are they looking for author's point of view? Are they looking for bias? What are ways that I want my students to analyze a document? I have truly, truly had to focus on this because at my school, it is not enough for students to just read and answer questions. Of course, reading comprehension has its place, but the push is really to develop strong ELA analytical skills. And so that is something that has really been driving a lot of my lesson plans. If I can't identify the skill, then something is wrong here, right? What is the goal for your students? Beyond content, how do you want them to get there? Are they reasoning with geography? Are they making an evaluation about a political or historical figure? Like what exactly are they doing and how are they going to get there? If your students are evaluating, how are they evaluating? Are they looking at negative and positive documents and articles and then making an assessment? Like how are you getting your students there? And so I have had a few times where I'm done with a lesson and then I'm like, and what is the skill? Okay, I know the content that I want them to learn, but how do I want them to get there? And so again, this is something that for I think many of you, you may be like, obviously, what is wrong with you, Amanda? But again, so much of my career was content, essay writing, Socratic seminars, more content, essay writing, Socratic seminars. And with middle school, you have to teach them those skills. You have to get them to that place. And this is something that I am very unfamiliar with, unfamiliar territory. But again, it's also extremely exciting. And then the last thing I want to share is that student feedback is crucial and necessary. My principal is really big on student voice, not necessarily student voice and speaking in the classroom, but true student voice and input, a very democratic process when it comes to the classroom. And I created a teacher report card where I had students fill out information about myself, about my class, how they felt in the classroom, and the feedback from sixth graders was amazing. So many of them wanted to be challenged even more. Some of them said that I really made social studies fun and that it was one of their favorite classes. And that's something that, you know, every teacher wants to hear. But hearing feedback from students, hey, I really liked this project, but next time, can you add this? I really liked this assignment. You should keep it for the following year. I really didn't enjoy this assignment because there weren't enough roles within the group. Like, students are so honest and so clear about what they need from you to be successful that not hearing from them could be a really big loss on your part as an educator. I would suggest giving a teacher report card maybe 2 to 3 months in the beginning of the year, and then using that data. I went over it with my students. I had showed them the responses where students had the most disagree, and then I had made it a point to really change those things about my teaching so that they were getting what they expected from me because I already have really high expectations of them. So the 5 things that I have learned since I have been teaching middle school, it's just my own teacher reflection at this point, being vulnerable with you guys and just sharing a little bit of the ups and the downs. But I am excited about next year. I do think that now that I've had this year almost done under my belt, I can really take a step back. Now that I'm a little bit familiar with content, I can now be a little bit more creative. Right now, I feel like I'm just doing because I'm trying to stay up to date and I'm trying to stay afloat. And the truth is, there are days when I don't even know what I'm doing 2 days from now. But now that I have my whole year mapped out, I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that next year I'll be able to be a little bit more creative and we'll be able to share a lot more strategies with you guys now that this year is over. I wasn't really able to do that this year because I am learning as I'm going. And so I didn't want to come on here and make it seem like I was an expert in this area because at this point I'm not. And so I didn't want to share from a place where I am still learning, but when it comes to self-reflection, that is something that I wanted to share with you. So I hope that you all enjoy this video. I am hoping to film so much more once the summer comes around, so I hope to see you all soon. If you are already done with your school year, congratulations. And if you're like me and you're done towards the end of June, we're so close, you guys. So we're almost there. I will see you all in the next video.